Hey, it's Bunny. Today we are here to paint a Tarrasque. He is really, really awesome. And he's huge. You can tell he's quite large. He's not the smallest dude. And when I paint something this big, I almost don't worry about the details. And I know I'm going to get a question about where I got this model. Okay, so this model is another Dungeons and Lasers model. I get a lot of questions about where I get my models. Some of my models are 3D printed and some of them are purchased. And in this particular case, this gigantic dude is from a Kickstarter a couple years ago. I believe you can buy him. Yes, you can. You can buy him now. He's not just a Kickstarter thing. He wasn't an exclusive. But he is a gigantic dude that was part of a Kickstarter that I absolutely adore. This was a fun Kickstarter. But I will put a link in the video description to him if I can find it. I believe he's available on the website. And I've had some people ask, well, can I put the Amazon links? I try if there is one, because some people can't necessarily order from overseas, and they tend to come from Poland. But I put the Amazon links when I can find one. Okay, I haven't ordered these off of Amazon. Most of mine come through Kickstarters or ordered direct from the manufacturer. So I look to see if I can find the Amazon link. So I will put it up if I find it. If I can't find it, then I can't find it. Then there's nothing I can do. So this guy is going to take quite a lot of actual painting. Okay, a lot of the models, they're fairly quick because they're small. But him, even if I want to do a very quick and simple job, which I am, okay, my goal here is I'm going to do a quick and simple job on him. It'll be simple, but it's not going to be quick. Why isn't it going to be quick? Because he's huge. Okay, he's a big guy. So he's a big guy. Being quick is just not in the cards. Okay, it's not going to happen. Being quick is just not going to happen with this dude. So I am doing a fairly simple coloration. So I intend to do mostly red, because for me, he's basically like a lava creature. Okay, something crawling from the depths of the earth. So mostly he's going to be like red, and he's going to be also kind of stony. So his top areas are going to be very stony. And I don't know what color I'm going to do the nails. I haven't decided. I don't want to do black again, because I do that a lot. I do a lot of black nails. I don't want to do black nails again. So I don't know. I don't know what color I'm going to do his nails. Not red. So I don't know. Maybe a deep blue, or not a bright blue. I don't know. I have not got that far ahead. So when you're doing something like this, like my base color here is going to be red, you just want to get good coverage. Okay, you want to get some decent coverage of this guy, because he's really big, so you're going to notice if you don't get full coverage. So I'm not going to go up onto all the stony areas on his back, because I don't need to, because that's not going to be red, but I am trying to get a lot of his body painted red, and I do want to make sure I get decent coverage. So if I don't get decent coverage, it's going to show. Okay, it is going to show. And I keep getting paint on my hand. I don't love paint on my hand, but you know, it kind of comes with the territory. So this, you just kind of slap this first coat on, because seriously, what else are you going to do? Let's get under his neck. But you just have to, you know, get as much of this color on as you can. And you don't want a lot of areas not covered. So what I'm doing is getting the areas where I know I'm going to have a difficult time reaching later. And I'm just deciding, you know what, get them painted red, because when it comes up later and you're not able to reach, at least it has some color on it. At least it's not devoid of color. That's kind of my goal here. It's kind of my goal. And I'm going to do him, obviously, in multiple passes. because I need to. Like, he needs to be done in quite a few different passes because he's got so much space. And I want to paint the inside of that mouth. A little more water in my paint here. The inside of that mouth painted. But literally the first coat is usually just get the paint on there. That's literally your first coat. Just do it. Get the paint on there and then get the paint in all the grooves and the crevices. And then if you miss an area later, especially on a model this big, you're probably not going to notice. Let's be honest. Be honest, you're not going to notice if you miss something on this model. Now we don't want to paint both sides at once. We're probably going to end up doing this in 4 passes just because of his size. His sheer size is insanity. Okay, we're probably going to end up doing 4 different passes just because, like, look at how big he is. So I don't want this to take forever. So despite the fact that this is a huge model, I don't want to spend 3 weeks on him. I really want to get him done in about, I don't know, if I had to pick an amount of painting time, I'd probably pick, I don't know, I'd like to get him done in total painting time 2 hours is kind of what I want, which sounds like not a lot of time, and it's not, but honestly, these guys are huge. Okay? And there is a simplicity in painting something this big because you can see everything a bit better. The downside is you also have to keep your eye out a little more for things that you would normally not care about in a smaller model. So, pros and cons. Pros and cons to everything. Let's see if we can get under here. We don't want to miss any areas. Like, seriously. You start missing areas and you're just going to kick yourself. I'm using his tail as a handhold. There's no brace or holder, anything that's going to hold a model this size. And yes, this is the correct size for Tarrasque in the D&D universe. In Dungeons & Dragons, this is how big they are. So he's the correct size. This is just how big they are. Sometimes when we're playing, we don't always consider the sizes if we're not playing with actual miniatures. You know, sometimes if we're just doing pen and paper and we're not doing maps and stuff and we're not doing actual miniatures, it's easy to forget that these guys are actually huge. Okay, these are like super gargantuan. These guys are big. So that's what I'm doing right now, is just getting him fully covered, which does take forever. And I really like this red, and I don't even know what it's called. In fact, I think it's not called anything because I actually mixed it out of a bunch of different colors and I put it in a bottle. So I don't think it actually has a name. I think it's one that I mixed and I never used. So I grabbed the bottle. Let's call it Crimson. I think it's Crimson. But I don't think it has like an official name because I really think it's just a combination of different paints I had and I was just making colors. Sometimes I do that. I sit down and I just make colors. I'm going to paint this whole, even though I know this is like rock. I don't care. I just want it painted. So I'm literally going to let him sit now. I'm just any spot that I maybe should have gotten and didn't. I'm going to go up his hip a little bit more. I'm just going to go up his hip a little bit more. I don't need to because this is all rock, but I'm just doing it. Just to do it. I'm doing it to do it. And then I just want to get the rest of the paint off my brush. Waste not, want not. So I'm just rubbing on this leg. Just to get as much of the paint off my brush as I can. Okay. We're going to let him sit and let him dry because he's huge. And he needs a chance to dry. That's going to take a while because that's actually a whack ton of paint. So we're going to walk away and let him thoroughly dry because that's a lot of paint, and also I want to move on and paint the rest of him, but I can't right now, so we'll come back when he's dry. All right, let's flip this guy over. He's a biggie, and now I'm painting up here just because I want to, just in case I change my mind about where the stone color is gonna go. But essentially We're now going to get his other side in this nice crimson color. Why this crimson color? I like it. And again, you can get as creative as you like with these. So I'm not going to get super crazy. I find that even with the bigger guys, focusing too much on the small things just doesn't get you anywhere. Okay, you just end up not really liking what you end up with anyway. So I'm going to get the front of this, but I'm not going to spend too much time worrying about this guy because I just want to get him done enough that I'm happy with him. So we want to make sure we get under here. So even though he's big, getting in these awkward spots can be tricky. That's why I'm painting this first. So a lot of times I'd paint the rock first just to get it out of the way. But I'm going to be honest, this area is really hard to reach. So you notice I just got the red on the guy, on the stone. I didn't mean to. It's just everything's in the way. That's just kind of what happens. Everything kind of ends up in the way. And I don't want to keep hitting things that I've already painted. So I'm doing the red first. And then I'll do the stone. I am going to do the stone immediately after this. After the tail. I have to do this in 3 passes. There's no way 1 pass is going to work. It's just not going to happen. Because 1 pass is just covering too much of his body. It's also a good chance to take a look and see if you miss spots on your first pass, at least on the underside. Because you're going to miss spots, especially with creatures this big. There's going to be a spot that you just didn't notice because your angle was wrong. Right? And then you flip them around and you go, oh, I see it now. So that's what I'm looking for as I paint, is in addition to everything else, I want to see if there's anything I missed. And I don't care if I wreck this brush. You'll notice I'm being rather rough with my brush. This is one of the brushes that I am rough with because I already wrecked it doing other things. Some techniques are harder on your brush than others. So I use it for this, doing base coats, and I use it for, here we go. I use it for dry brushing as well. Get in here. And then when this brush wears out, I'll just use another brush that I've used a lot of. Because we all have brushes that we've used enough that they look terrible. That they're just not in good condition. So this is the kind of thing you can use. This kind of brush where you've already destroyed it doing a bunch of other things. It's good for doing base coats. It's good for adding washes, and it's good for dry brushing. All those things, you know, that kind of can wreck your brush, and you don't really want to wreck your brush, but you end up wrecking your brush anyway because the technique you're using is just kind of hard on the bristles, or you like to paint going in, which I do a lot, where I paint pushing the paint into my brush. And you shouldn't do that. You really should not do that. But I do it, and it wrecks brushes. And so if you're going to do that, you have to know that you're going to wreck the brush you've got. So because I know I'm going to do that, I'm going to destroy brushes. I don't feel bad when I destroy them because I knew in advance I was doing that. So just know that certain techniques do destroy your brush, and you just have to be okay with that. It's good to have a couple of junk brushes lying around. That's what I have. Like this one is a total junker now. It didn't used to be, obviously, but the techniques I've used it for over time have kind of killed it. So that's okay. That is okay. It's okay to destroy a brush and then use it for things that destroyed brush is still good for. So even though this particular brush isn't any good for detail painting or anything like that, it still has uses. At least until I completely destroy it, which I will. That's kind of what happens. I mean, should we try and preserve our brushes? Sure. Get as much life out of them as we can, because then we know that we're not wasting our money. But at the end of the day, it is just a brush, and even expensive brushes are relatively cheap. So we're not going to worry about it too much. And I am just going to go over in this inside area a little bit more. There's a couple of spots that I probably should have got better. There we go. And a couple of spots on the belly here that I can see that I didn't quite nab. So we're just going to do that now. And I'm going to paint the bottom of his foot again. Even though I think I'm doing his foot pads a different color, I'm still going to do them this red just in case. Because what if I change my mind and I don't want to do them a different color? Then I need this color. So I might as well just paint them in this color now, and I can go over them later if I want to. There we go. So we're just going to let him dry. Paint a little bit of his tail while it's exposed like this. But I can't get all of it, obviously. I'm going to have to make sure that I get it in detail later by grasping the body, which I can't do right now because the body's wet. So it's a good idea to just not rush yourself. I mean, you can paint the layer in a rush. Like, I'm going pretty quick. But don't rush the drying process. Let things dry the way they were meant to dry. Just getting the rest of the paint off my brush. Use up as much of that paint. I don't like wasting paint if I can avoid it. That's why I tend to paint things in batches where I'm using similar colors, because I really don't like having paint out that doesn't get used. So that's why I like to do similar colored items back to back, just so I can use that paint. There we go. All right, there we go. We're going to let him dry, and we will come back in a few hours when that has thoroughly set, and we'll paint the final part of that red so that we can move on to the stone, because I am going to move on to the stone. I like the stone. I want to move on to the stone. So I'm definitely moving on to that next. All right, let's get this tail painted, because this tail definitely needs to get painted. Now, when you're doing something like this guy, like, I could choose to do different shades of red, and I could choose to do different shades of orange and yellow. A lot of people do that. I could do almost a gradient effect like I tend to do with my dragons. I could do that. But instead of doing that, I kind of want to be at a point where I can just paint him red, like I'm doing. So he gets painted red. And then he gets an umber wash. And then out of that umber wash, I do a gold dry brush. And when I say gold dry brush, I mean only on the scaly parts, not on the muscly parts. Okay, so he's got some muscly parts on like his legs here that I'm just going to quickly touch up. But he's got some muscly parts on his legs, and I wouldn't dry brush those. I would leave those red with the wash. But he's got all these scales. So if you look where I painted that, his tail there, those are all scales. If you look on his side, those are all scales, right? All of that is a scale. This part here, what I'm touching up now, is muscle, so I wouldn't do that. Muscle on his neck here. But then we get back to scales on his chest. Why wouldn't I dry brush those scales gold? So I don't want too much competing nonsense. So some people like them very busy, like their models really busy. I do not. I don't like the busyness. So because I don't like the busy, I'm not going to paint busy. And because I'm not going to paint busy, I don't want all of those oranges and reds and yellows and then try and do the gold wash, because the gold wash won't really show up. I want it to show up. I want you to be able to see, oh yeah, that's definitely supposed to be standing out with that gold gold dry brush. I want it to show up. And so I don't want it so busy because that'll distract the eye. Also, I just don't feel like spending 6 weeks painting this guy. Because he's large, and you can go two ways with larger models. You can either go, yeah, he's huge, he's going to take forever to paint, or go, okay, he's huge, but I'm not using him in 100 campaigns. He's probably only going to be used in 3 or 4. Let's face it, this guy is a level 20 monster. How often are you going to be using him? How many people play level 20 characters? A lot of times we're just restarting a new character because we want to. So a lot of people will never even get to the point where they fight a Tarrasque, but I'm going to. I do regularly because I like to play the same character over multiple campaigns, and we like to do level 20 campaigns in our group, but I know a lot of people don't. So a lot of groups won't even use this monster very often, and he'll be more like a display piece. So because of that, I am not going to devote 100 hours to him. I'm going to basically just calm down on the painting of him. So after this, we're going to come back, we're going to paint the rock at his feet. Okay, that's the next step here. I'm going to do the rock at his feet just to get it out of the way. And then I'm either going to do his nails after that, or I'm going to do his horns and stuff. I haven't decided yet. Depends on what direction I take. So next up, we're going to do my favorite gray color on the stone. Then we will come back and continue on. All right, that is nice and dry. It is time to paint the stone. And for that, I have broken out my favorite color for stone. If you've watched very many of my videos, you will know that I quite enjoy this particular color. And this particular color, they call it pewter gray on the bottle. It's not. But the thing I like about it is it kind of has this grit when it dries, and I really love that. Okay, I love the grittiness. I absolutely adore that grittiness to it. And this is where it gets tricky. Okay, you have to get underneath things. This is why I'm painting this now, because it allows me time to really touch up anything that I end up wrecking, because getting in here is not easy. Okay, so go slow, don't be too hard on yourself. If you end up messing up and getting paint where it shouldn't be, nothing's beyond correction. You can fix pretty much anything. And if you don't feel like fixing it, you don't have to. So there are going to be times where you get paint where it's not supposed to go. That's normal, it happens. We all do it. And you know what? If it doesn't bother you, let it go. So I accidentally got, just now, some gray paint on the underside of his foot. I've decided I don't care that much. Why don't I care that much? Because I don't. Because I don't think it's worth worrying about. Who's going to see the underside of his foot? Like, I'll see it if I turn him upside down, but how often does a Tarrasque get turned upside down during gameplay? He doesn't get turned upside down. He generally just kills everybody. So, hey, it's true. Most groups think they can take out a Tarrasque, and then they go to do it, and they die. Because a Tarrasque is actually, if you've not played D&D, you might not realize how crazy a Tarrasque is and how difficult they are to defeat. because these guys are bonkers. Okay? They're complete bonkers. So, yeah. If he's got some paint on the underside of his feet, I'm not going to worry about it. Because it doesn't matter. Who's going to see it? Who's going to see it? Only me. I'm the only one who's going to see it. So I don't care. Sometimes you just have to decide you don't care about something. Okay, that's what I do. I just don't care. There we go. So I'm going to paint this entire area gray. This entire area is just getting painted gray. Okay, I'm not... Sometimes, you know, you do different colors. I'm not. I am going to keep him relatively simple. I'm painting the entire thing gray, and then it's going to get like an umber wash just to define it. But I don't want this part to stand out. We're not looking at the stone he's standing on. We're looking at the Tarrasque. We don't care what he's standing on. What he's standing on is irrelevant to the Tarrasque itself. He's just standing on it because he's standing on it. It's not a part of the story. And I really like this model because it is at scale for your standard D&D figures. So he really is this big in the game if you encounter him. Most of us don't have a model big enough to actually represent a Tarrasque. Okay? Or as my one son calls it, Tesseract. Whatever. It's fine. We don't worry about it. My younger son, sometimes he can't pronounce things yet because he's still pretty young. And Tesseract makes sense to him, so it's Tesseract. It's actually Tarrasque. And I've actually heard people pronounce it multiple ways. I don't really care what you call it. It's a big old monster that is going to destroy your entire party. That's pretty much its goal in life, is to be a big old monster that destroys your entire party. Because, yeah, that's what it does. And it's a fun monster to play against, as long as you're not too married to your character. So I'm not going to worry too much about getting the gray on his nails, because I'm going to come back and paint his nails. I'm still deciding on a color for the nails. I don't know. I'm not really 100% sure what color I want. I don't know if I should do like a deep blue. I thought maybe would be fun. Right, I like blue. I don't know. Maybe green. Probably not green. I think if I give him, he's primarily red, so I think if I give him, oops, don't break him. But I think if I give him green nails, it'll start to look like a Christmas Tarrasque, and that's not good. I've just put a whole bunch of paint on here because I'm going to need a lot of it. So I don't know. I don't know what color I'm going to do his nails yet. I am leaning towards blue, but that's not set in stone. I'm just deciding. What do I like the look of? I like the look of green, but to be honest, he's going to look like a Christmas decoration if I put too many Christmas colors on him. So maybe not green. Even though I like the way red and green go together. It always makes me happy, but then I know someone in our group is going to say, ooh, it looks like a Christmas decoration. Yes. So we're going to try to avoid that. And for the stone on his back is not really stone. It's part of him. This is stone he's standing on. That's why it's getting this gray. So the other stone on his back is a part of him himself. So it's not going to be the same color. That would be weird. Generally, they don't have the same color on them as the stone around them. At least when I'm doing it. Because otherwise he doesn't stand out. Can you imagine if I painted all those spines this gray as well? It'd be very boring. I'm thinking a lighter color. Not a toasted marshmallow or anything. That's too light. But, I don't know, maybe kind of a pale beige. One of my beiges might be cool, especially if I'm hitting it with an umber wash later, because I am. I'm going to hit it with an umber wash. Again, I don't care if I'm messing up his nails. It doesn't really matter, because they're not painted yet. Just getting this on there. So I just have to decide on his final color scheme. But I do know that I'm just leaving the red because I want to gold wash, and I don't want too many colors, because sometimes we do that. We add too many colors, which is fine on some things, but I think this guy, he's more like just a lava monster. Like, that's what they are. They're like from the depths of the ground, and the way I've painted him, he's kind of lava-like. So that's what he is. Not all of them, obviously. That's just how I'm painting this guy. So that's kind of what I'm going with. Because I like the color. I like reds. I do. I like reds. And I don't use a lot of red in my painting, mostly because a lot of what I'm painting doesn't call for red, but I do like reds. So I'm not really looking for a way to avoid red. It's just I don't use it that often. So this is an opportunity to really do a lot of red, which is kind of cool. I'm just going to take a peek at where I might have missed, which is, I think I did pretty well, but I'll check it again when it's dry. For now, we do have to let him dry before we do anything else, because the more you try to do when he's wet, the more you screw it up. So we're just going to leave him be, let him dry, and come back when he's completely dry, and then we'll carry on. Okay, let's get this guy popped up. And let's start on his spines here. We're probably going to do this in a couple of passes because I'm not going to want to turn him upside down once I paint the top of this, because we're gonna have to grab him, and I don't want to grab him. So we're just going to start painting the stony parts, and I'm using a, what is it called, a warm buff color to paint this. And I'm going to get my larger brush anyway because that's taken too long. So I'm just going to grab my larger brush. It's going to take too long with the littler brush. That's okay. That is okay. We're going to use the larger brush just because we can. And again, I'm going to end up doing a wash, probably an umber wash, because he deserves a dark wash. So this is going to end up looking like a pale limestone or something, which is the plan. But remember, when you're picking your colors, account for the fact that you might be doing a wash or a dry brush. And if you do those things, that changes the way the color looks. So when I put for example, the umber wash I'm going to use on this warm buff, we are going to end up with a color that darkens quite a bit. Okay, so we're going to end up with a color that definitely does not look like a warm buff. It'll look much, much darker. So you always have to remember that. So when you're painting, if you're going to go with a dark wash, do the color a little bit lighter than you want it to end up, because that's exactly what happens. You end up with your colors getting so dark. That's why his red is relatively bright. The red I used on the body is relatively bright for what I would want, but I'm going to be deepening it with that umber wash, so it's going to darken. And I'm just using the bigger brush on this tail because I don't have to worry about getting near the red area. I definitely did not put enough paint on my palette, so at some point here I'm going to have to pause and add a little more. But this guy's a big guy. You have to remember when you're painting things that are this large that you're going to need a lot of paint. Okay? That's it. They're big. So this guy is like gargantuan plus. Like, he's huge. And yeah, this is the correct scale. I get asked that question whenever you see a miniature this big. Is that even to scale? Yes. This one is to scale. So sometimes you'll get other models. So this is a Dungeons and Lasers model, like a lot of my models. And sometimes you'll get models that are not exactly what I would call to scale. okay? They're not quite to scale. And that's okay. Not everything has to be to perfect scale when you're playing. That's okay. You can have a smaller model when it comes to... there's too much water on that brush. What's wrong with me? But you can absolutely have a smaller scale with these guys. So you don't have to use something that's this big. You can use a smaller thing as a representation on your game table and just say, you know what, this is him. That's how big he is. You can get smaller models. But I like this guy. One, I like how big he is. I enjoy the sheer size of this particular model. I just like how big he is. They're also really easy to paint. So when I'm deciding what to paint the rock color, I'm looking for things that definitely look rock. Okay, they definitely look like rock and not like they're supposed to be scale. So I'm looking for things that look rock-ish and not just scaly. Okay. There we go. So I'm just kind of going down on his body here a little bit. But I mean, you obviously, when you're painting, you get to decide how far down you go, what parts are what color. If you don't like the idea of, if you were painting this same model, if you didn't like that particular area looking like it's this beige color, just don't, you know, just don't. You can do whatever you like. So what I'm doing here is I'm using really short, small strokes, okay? Short, small strokes because there's a lot of grooves that I want to get in. And when you're getting in those grooves, you want to make sure that you're actually covering where you want to cover with paint. So I'm just doing short, small strokes, and I'm moving my brush in the direction of the areas that are already painted so that I don't accidentally paint the red where I don't want to paint the red. Okay, so if you move your brush up into or down, like, so if you're painting and you don't want to cover something that's below where you're painting, move your brush in the direction of the color you're already working with. So I want to move it into the warm buff, not away from the warm buff. If I move it into the warm buff, then I am more likely to contain the color and not end up with the color in all the wrong spots, because that's what'll happen. That's 100% what will happen. So I did switch to a smaller brush, and then I'll switch back to the bigger brush after I get these smaller bits. So you kind of have to look and decide where your bits are, right? Like this I'm deciding is rock, that I'm deciding is not, so I'm skipping it. That's what you have to do. You have to kind of go through and just keep an eye as you're painting. Look at each part and decide what that belongs to. You may not make the same decisions as I do, right? Like you might decide something that is completely the opposite of me. You might decide to go further down the leg. You might decide not to go down the leg at all. That's okay, right? We're not in a competition here. We're deciding how we want the thing to look. And I really want it to have a certain look. And because I want it to have a certain look, I am making sure the things I want are painted the color I want. Because that's fun. But always just take your time. Go slow. You're not in a rush. Unless you're playing a game tonight and you have to have them painted for tonight, you're probably not in a rush. So he could take a couple of hours to paint. At this point, I'm not sure how long this video is going to be, but he could also take days. So as I'm recording right now, I don't know how long the total video is, because obviously I'm just kind of getting started with the painting. And he's a big guy, so it'll be a longer video anyway, automatically, right? Because that's just the way it is. Rocky parts. And it's okay if some of that red peeks out from beneath. I'm okay with that, especially if it's in the grooves. I am okay with that particular look. So just keep your eyes peeled. I'm just going to hit the back of his arm here with this color as well. So what you're going to find when you're doing this is, at first you're like, I don't really like the way that looks, because it really is the washing or the dry brushing that brings out all of the detail. Okay? So when you're painting now, like, you have to be able to imagine what it will look like once you hit him with the wash or the dry brush. I'm just moving back here so I can see what I'm painting. I'm just gonna tip him a little bit so I can see a little bit better. There we go. And then we'll get him when we're painting the underneath. But you have to be able to look at him and go, you know, I can see what he'll look like when I hit him with that wash. Because the look changes entirely. So they go from looking bright and the colors looking kind of like they don't match each other to looking very much coordinated once you add that wash. I'm just going careful here. I'm just kind of hitting the tops of some of these rocky areas. Just going to switch to my bigger brush for these areas. There we go. But you have to kind of be able to picture it. If you can't, work on some smaller pieces, even just flat tiles. Get some flat map tiles and spend some time painting them. Because if you spend some time painting those flat map tiles, you might see, when you add the wash, you'll see how it deepens the tile, how it changes the way everything looks. Okay, and that is so important when you're painting these things, because this kind of hides the detail. Painting it one flat color hides the detail, and these models are so detailed. Okay, I just dipped my brush in the wrong color because I'm an idiot. But there we go. You just want to take a really good look and pay attention to how adding the washes will change the look of your model. Because too many times we don't really think about it. We don't, when we're painting, we're just like, oh, I'll just paint it and I'll add the wash later. But when you're painting something as big as this, where you have large swatches, excuse me, but something like this where you have large swaths of area that is just one color, right? Like the red or this. This is all one color on purpose, okay? I'm not deciding that I'm not going to paint it. I'm deciding this is the color I want, right? I'm not deciding, oh, I just don't feel like doing so much painting, I'm just going to do it. No, this is the color I want it to have. But yes, this color does, and a lot of colors do, kind of hide the detail. One flat color hides detail. So when you apply your washes, they sink down into those grooves and they start to look fantastic. And that's important because washes are the easiest way to add dimension, but they also darken your piece. So pay a lot of attention to the color choices, as well as everything else I mentioned. Pay attention to your color choices, because your color choices could make or break the piece. Give me that. Under here, I don't love painting underneath, to be honest. I could just wait till I flip him, because I'm going to have to do the bottom. But I kind of want to at least get most of it. And when he dries, I'll be able to see where I missed. Sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes you can't get on those under edges till you flip them. And I am going to have to flip them for that tail. But I can do my best. Come on. Okay, let's rotate you a little bit. And we're going to use my smaller brush again so that I can do these areas. Why is that going off? I don't know. My phone is telling me something and I don't care. I don't care that much. Yes, sometimes you have to make sound effects when you're painting. You have to go swoosh or doot doot. It's important. It's important. There. I'm not gonna get those areas, but I am gonna do this. This looks like a little rocky projection. And I'm gonna do these guys. Kind of do little doot doots down his rockiness, which is what I want. And again, some of them I'm not, some of the little rock areas I'm actually leaving red because it's about what I want him to look like. Like if I want this particular area to look like it's rock, that's what I'm painting it as. And it's not really rock, right? It's part of him. It's part of him. And that part of him just happens to be rockish. There we go. And so we're literally just, I'm using the smaller brush just to get the edge pieces because my bigger brush will make a mess of them. So I'm just using this slight, and it's not even a small brush. I'm not using a small brush. And so what else do we have to do after this guy's body? So we have, I'm going to paint, I've decided on the rocky base, I'm going to paint a part a little bit lighter. And why am I doing that? Because I want to. There's a little area that looks like a little crypt or something, and I kind of want that to stand out, so I'm painting it a lighter gray. So I have to do that. I have to do his toenails. I think I'm going to do his toenails like an indigo color. I really thought about doing the green because I really love green and red together, but again, like I mentioned in the last segment, I really don't want a Christmas Tarrasque. It doesn't need to be themed after the holidays. So there we go. And I'm going to paint his horns this same color. So this is all going to be one large color, one continuous color, and then it's going to get covered with another color. Maybe it'll get covered with another color. It's certainly getting covered with a wash. Again, it's okay to change your mind part way. Hold his hand so he doesn't rock. There we go. Get his horn. So don't be afraid to switch your brush, because a lot of people start with one size brush and they think that's the size they have to use through the entire model. It's not. You can absolutely use a different color as you go. There we go. Put that brush down. We're just going to rotate him a little bit, and I have to watch his tail, because his tail was under the camera base there. Camera. There we go. A little more of this on the horns. Again, there's the underside when I flip them over, so I'm not going to worry too much about underneath. In some areas, like on the spikes, it was bothering me. But on the horns, it's just going to be when I flip him, I'll see what I didn't hit. So we want his entire noggin Or most of his noggin, not his entire noggin. We don't want to go below the eyeballs. But we want a lot of his noggin in this color. I'm gonna really like this color when it's... I don't love this color. This warm buff. I don't love it, to be honest, until it darkens with a wash. It looks really great when you darken it. I don't love it without a wash on top. That's why I knew I was going to put a wash on him. The second I picked this color, I was like, he needs a wash. He was gonna need a wash anyway. Let's be honest. Okay. Sometimes the hardest parts are figuring out where on the face you want to end certain things. So at what point do I want to stop with the warm buff and let it be red? It's a judgment call, really. It really is a judgment call. Might as well get some of this tail on here. Like where that ended. It looks good. And am I gonna have to do a second coat? Probably. Will I probably do a second coat off camera? I don't know. Depends on if I have to do like an entire second coat. That'll be annoying. So if I have to do an entire second coat, I probably won't. But if I just have to do a little touching up, it's probably fine. Here's where it gets tricky because I have to decide. So that'll be a rock. So you have to decide what's rock and what's flesh, right? Even though it's all technically his flesh because it's a part of him, but it's rocky flesh. Looks like he's rising from the earth. This one. And he's not identical on both sides. So you can't even use that as a guide. He's actually quite different on each side. So a lot of times you can just check what you did on the other side, but he's not identical. So you kind of have to make decisions twice, which is fun. This is stick. Now we're gonna get this arm, and it always looks better once you add the wash. So right now, especially on a model this big, he's not gonna look great. It's weird, your bigger models just don't look as good when you're painting. They look fantastic when you're done. Right? They look fantastic when you're done, but while you're actually doing the painting, you're like, I don't know, it's because the pieces are so big. And it looks like you should paint more than you are, but you really don't have to. Okay. Little rocky deposit on his arm there. And then rocky arms in here. Okay. Switch brushes again. My hands are starting to go numb. So I will have to wrap up this session probably before I finish what I wanted to. Remember, you should be comfortable while you're painting. You shouldn't be all, oh geez, my arm hurts, oh geez, my foot hurts. If you're not comfortable, stop and take a break, right? So I have poor circulation. So sometimes my hands will start to go numb. It's not the fault of the painting or anything. It's not that. It's just, you know, I have a medical condition. So sometimes when you have a medical condition, or even if you're just tired, like, you don't have to keep going. If you want a break, you just take a break. It's not a job. It's a hobby, right? You want a break, just take a break. That's what I'm going to do shortly. See if I can get this side done before my hand really starts to bother me. Switch back to this brush to go along the edges Don't be afraid to switch brushes. Not every brush works for everything. That's why we have multiple brushes. I have, this brush is a little bit smaller, still a larger brush. Like I don't need my tiny miniature brushes for this model because he's pretty big. Let's be honest, he's huge. That's a rock area, that's a rock area. That's what I'm deciding. What's rock, what's not. Painting models like this, it's basically all you do. Just decide what's rock and what's not. Okay, we're gonna make his hip rocky, because I think it should be. And then I'm gonna want his knee to be fairly rocky, because it can be. So remember, you're making the choice, right? It doesn't matter if somebody else doesn't like your choices, like, too bad. That's the way you painted it. If somebody wanted a Tarrasque to look a certain way, they can paint it themselves, or they can pay to have someone do it. And then they kind of have to do it the way you want. But if you're just painting for fun, for your group, if someone doesn't like it, they can paint their own. Because these are cool, they're also a lot of work. Like, this is not as good a job as I would do if someone were if I was being paid to do it. So sometimes people pay me to do stuff. Yep. That's why you'll see occasionally there's like a really fancy dragon or something on my channel. And that was usually a paid commission where when you're paid to do it, check how far down I went. That ridge line. Okay, so I'm only going to the ridge line. But when you're paid to do it, obviously you have to do what the client wants, which you have to do what you're being paid to do. So when I was getting paid, when I get paid to do a commission, it will not necessarily be of a higher quality, just be more detailed. Like, I'm not actually big on doing a huge amount of detail for my own pieces, because it comes down to a question of why. Why would I bother? Why would I spend so much time? Except on characters. Some of the characters, if I'm going to use them a lot, so if I'm painting a character that I'm absolutely going to use multiple times over multiple scenarios, then yes, I might spend a little more time making sure that character is fancier, basically. Right? But in general, for most things, let's see if we can get in there. Lift him up, see if I can really get in there. But for most things, I prefer a simpler job because, one, it's easier, right? It is so much easier to just do it. So much easier to get it done. But beyond that, I just don't necessarily love super detail, okay? Because it just looks too finicky. And it is. It's way too finicky. I need a little more paint. I'm actually going to need a lot more paint of that color. Good thing I have a whole bottle. I bought a whole bottle of this color just because I knew I was going to use it on this guy. But yeah, I don't love super detail. I prefer to spend my time playing with the characters I painted, because we play actively. We play a couple times a week if we can, during, when everyone's not busy with work. We play a couple times a week if we can. In busy seasons, so like my job, my busy season is more summer, so in the summer we tend to meet a little less, like more like once a month. In the winter, when my job specifically is quite a bit slower, we tend to meet like twice a week up to. Not always twice a week, but sometimes twice a week, which is really fun. So do I like in-person groups or online groups? I prefer in person. There's nothing wrong with online groups, I'm gonna be honest. I do them, but I prefer in person. It is so much fun to actually get together with a group and be hanging out and doing a lot of fun stuff and enjoying your time together and just having a good time. Because I think we spend too much time apart, I'm gonna be honest. I think we don't foster a sense of community anymore. And one of the ways we foster a sense of community is we play together. And now sometimes someone has to appear virtually. So we set up a computer and stuff and they're playing virtually. But we try when we can to have it be in person and have everyone here so everyone can enjoy just being together. Because I think especially since the pandemic, people just aren't around each other enough. They just don't care about each other the way they used to. So we've made a real effort to hang out with each other, to play. And because of that, I love having the painted miniatures when we play. It just enhances everything. But it's not the be all and end all of the game, right? It's just not. Reach over here and get this inside. The funny thing is I just spotted a spot where I didn't paint enough red. I missed a whole chunk of red here near his butt. That's okay. I'll grab it in a sec. Or I'll grab it off camera. Whole section I missed. Can't believe that. But yeah, I think I'm gonna let him alone for now. I think so. And then, yeah, I think I'll let him alone for now. And then I will come back and flip him over and get the underside where there's a couple of spots I'll have not been able to get to because frankly, sometimes you just have to wait. So I'm going to do that. And I am going to get that underside of red so that I have that, and then I'm going to paint the stone and I'm going to paint the nails, and then I'm going to start worrying about the face a little bit. So we'll see what we do with the face. I haven't quite decided. Okay, let's flip them over and finish with that bone color. We got to finish off these horns, and this also gives me the opportunity to get in some of these grooves that I couldn't get into before because I couldn't really see them. So the trick with painting big guys, you have to be patient because they're huge and they take a while. So the last segment, it was literally like 30 minutes of me just slowly and carefully painting those spines. So then I'm just deciding, yes, I'm gonna do the nose here. I'm just deciding I'm gonna do the nose in this color because I can. Sometimes you just make a decision on the fly, and I prefer the nose this lighter color because I can. Sometimes that's the answer. Why did you paint it that color? Because I could. Sometimes that's literally the entirety of the answer. I could, so I did. Right? That's okay for that to be the answer. I'm just deciding where I want the stone to be and where I want the red to be. It's okay. It's okay to change your mind partway through. I just did. I'm like, I was gonna go a little further. Yeah. It's okay to do that. It's okay to decide, you know what? I want to go a little bit further. It's your model. Paint what you want to paint. There we go. And his eyes are right there. I'm not going to worry about his eyes until I get to the face detail. And his eyes I'm not going to worry about that much. I'm going to do a yellow probably, and then I'm going to stick like an orange or a red wash in them. I haven't quite decided on that color, but I'm not going to worry about it too much. This is also a good opportunity to, the leg pieces that you couldn't really see very well, update them with a little more of the color we're looking for. Because it's hard to see from, sometimes you have to just wait till you can change your angle. And these guys, like these guys especially, I'm going to do the tail as well, but these guys especially, there was no way to get them from that upright position because you just couldn't see, but I didn't want to, I couldn't move him because I couldn't touch his back. So literally half the time, you're just like, okay, well, this is all I can do right now, and you have to just change your angle. That's a lot of the time, that's all it is. Okay. And yes, I went and updated his tail there where I missed a red spot that should have been red and wasn't. So I did do that. And then we want a little more on this one, and then some on the tail. Then we're also going to take a minute. There we go. Get in there. We're also going to take a minute to paint some nails. I did decide on that indigo blue. I know I wasn't sure what color I was going to paint them. I really did want to do green. But again, I don't want to do a Christmas Tarrasque. Because that's always when you combine red and green on a monster, guaranteed your entire group's gonna be like, is he for Christmas? Guaranteed. Because it happens every time. I really like red and green together, not because of the holidays, but because I like red and green together. Do you think that matters? No, I get the, oh, is he for Christmas? Every single time. So just fair warning, if you combine a lot of red and green on your monsters, you're going to get the is he for Christmas speech from your friends. And it's annoying, but I'm deciding where to go for this one. Let's just fill this whole area in. I don't like, there's a scale there that probably should be red and it's bugging me, so it's not red. I just don't like the way it looks. And on this side, I'm going up this way and filling all of this in. Remember, it's your model. You get to decide. And then I'm just going to paint these spikes, the underside of the spikes. Remember to use the appropriate size brush. If I was using a really tiny brush, this would be so annoying. Because I'd be like 25 strokes just to get... these guys. And we're actually going to call that good. I don't care that much. Do a little on this side. Okay, now we're going to roll him down. Okay, we're going to rinse the brush because I need a different color. And I'm going to come in with this lighter gray, and I'm just going to hit this little guy. Just so it's a slightly different gray. I just added a little white, just a little white. And I'm just going to hit this little bit of like ancient ruins or something that's poking out here. This little, I'm not sure what it is. I can't decide what it is. It could be a couple of different things. But there we go. I can see better now. I'm not sure what this guy is. A little effigy or whatever. I don't know. It doesn't matter what he is. I think he should be a different color than the stone around him. So that's what I'm doing right now, is just painting him a different color. Not a completely different color. Like I said, all I did was add white to the gray I used the first time. Right? I didn't do anything super fancy. I just added a little bit of white. Sometimes that's all you have to do. Sometimes if you just take a color and add white or add black if you want to make it darker, or add a little gray to it, if you just take the same color and add another color to it, sometimes that's all you have to do, because then the color still fits, right? The color still fits then. And if the color still fits, then you're fine. Because what you don't want to do is have your colors look weird together. I'm just getting this little bit I can see from this side. Okay, rinsing brush again. All right, what I'm gonna do here, best place to lift them right now is from the spine. I am going to use some of this and paint his nails just this indigo color. Does it need to be this indigo color? Of course not. It's just I wanted to go green. I think I've said that a dozen times now, but I'm just not going to go green. I am going blue. Okay, I don't like how much water's on my brush right now. Okay, there we go. Nails can be annoying to paint, mostly because they don't have a lot of texture to them sometimes. Sometimes they're so incredibly smooth and you're just like annoyed because they're smooth. It's one of those things that can be annoying simply because they don't have the texture you want them to have, right? Like with something this big, there's a lot of rotating. That's the one thing I will say about models this big, is you have a lot of rotating, big rotations, because he's so big. So every little movement of your model is like this huge rotation, and it's annoying. It's really annoying. So just know that when you're working with models this big, it can be awkward because of that. But this is the final color for this segment. Then we're going to start actually working on his face. So that'll be fun because I like doing the faces. And I have to decide what color to do for his tongue. And I'm seriously leaning towards this indigo. The reason I'm leaning for this indigo, because one, I don't like adding more colors than necessary. But also, I think it'd be kind of cool if his teeth, if his tongue matched his claws. I just think that would be cool. Is it necessary? Of course not. But I think it might be cool. I really have to rotate them to get the back of the... There's a lot of rotating. That's the downside with models this big. Be prepared to have to do a lot of rotating. It's so annoying. But you want to be able to get all sides of your nails. Final side of, so even these nails take too long to paint just because he's so big, right? So when painting, basically these are like bigatures instead of miniatures. When painting stuff like this, expect that it's going to take a long time. Not necessarily because it's more complicated than a little one, just because there is so much to paint. Because that's the one thing sometimes you're like, oh, he'll be easy because he's so big. And he is easy. They're easier because you can see them better. Okay? Rotate them again. It's a lot of rotating. But I can't see this nail otherwise. So there's going to be a lot of moving your model. But they're not fast because you're applying so much paint. So I kind of put off painting him. It's not that I didn't want to paint him. It's that I knew he was going to take a significant amount of actual painting time. So when I talk painting time, I'm not considering I'm not considering the amount of time it takes to dry. I'm only considering active painting time. This guy, I just messed up his nail because I touched it with my thumb. Fix that nail. There we go. There we go. But I'm only considering the amount of time your brush is actually working. And these guys take forever. I mean, just look at how long it took to apply the warm buff to his back. That took me half an hour. And that is a crazy amount of time for a little miniature guy. Where is his other nail? His other nail is on the side of him. Okay. Just so I know what I'm looking for. Now, sometimes you have to take a minute and look at your model, and I knew there was another nail because his outstretched hand, the front, has a 5th nail, so I was just looking for where it was. And it turns out it's simply right on the side of his foot, because this foot isn't spread out, so it took a minute to find it. But I knew it had to be there. Knew it had to be there, so turn you this way so I can get the other side of your nails. There you go. I'm painting your nails, man. Blue. I'm sure you like it. And yeah, I'm gonna paint his tongue as well. I might as well, since I have this color out right now. Okay. Paint his tongue there. I don't do too much worrying about the inside of a mouth because frankly, unless it's like really gaping, people aren't really looking. So I'm just painting the tongue. I think that's kind of cool. Actually, that does look kind of cool. All right. We're going to come back. We're going to let that dry because the other spots I want to work on, I'm going to just end up touching what I already painted. So we are going to let that guy dry. We're going to come back when he is dry enough. And then we will continue working on him, which will be fun because we've already put quite a lot of time into this guy. Okay, time to move on. I'm going to start working on the face because again, we're not fussing too much. Just want him to look cool enough. There we go, one eye. We just want him to look cool enough. He doesn't have to be perfect. It's hard sometimes to see the eyes. There we go. Use the smallest brush you've got when you're doing eyes because at best they're tricky. Now I'm going to use a lighter color. It's similar to that warm buff, but it's actually a toasted marshmallow. I'm going to use it for like the fanginess. I want it to be almost the same color, but not quite. Almost, not quite. Turn him over. These big guys are always tricky to work with. I'm doing his upper teeth here. Teeth are tricky. Teeth can be quite tricky. So again, you have to use a fairly small brush to hit exactly where you want. So the smallest brush you've got, I think this is a 000. And then we're just gonna reach inside and do the opposite side. If you need to do the inside of teeth, the best thing you can do is do it from the opposite side. It's the easiest way. Even then it won't be perfect, but it's close enough. You don't need perfect. See what I'm doing here. Teeth are tricky because seeing them is not always easy. Like, seeing the teeth can be a little bit tricky. Now we're painting these fangs. So this is a similar color, but a little bit different. So for total paint time, even just this basic job that I'm doing, I'm not even doing anything fancy to him. It's taking a couple of hours of total paint time. And I'm not talking about him drying, right? When I say paint time, I don't mean dry time. I mean just the actual painting. And he's already taken me a couple of hours. Right? By the time he's done, it's going to be over 2 hours of work, which is fine. Like, I definitely don't mind that. But what you have to remember is he's bigger. He'll definitely take more time. He'll take more paint. So just be aware of that when you're going to start. Like, you're not going to finish this guy in an afternoon. Right? It's not going to happen. Teeth. That looks pretty good, or good enough. I don't need it to look pretty good, just good enough. Then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a little bit of white, and I'm going to run a strip of white down the middle of his tongue. I'm going to have a little bit too much water on here, but a little bit of white on the tongue, not a ton, and I'm letting it kind of spread. I'm actually going to add a little water to the bottom of the tongue. There, let that white spread a little bit. Oops. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my white and I'm just going to do a little slice of white down the side of each nail. So you remember how I said nails are kind of boring because they don't have any real dimension because they tend to be very flat? Well, I'm giving them a little dimension with a slice of white. Just down one side. Just down one side of each nail. Just so that they have just a little bit of character. It doesn't have to be perfect, just a quick little slash of white, and you'll be just fine. I'm just wanting to, switching hands and using my left hand here. Yeah, I'm painting left-handed. I'm pretty close to ambidextrous. So if you ever notice I'm painting with my left hand, that's why. Going here. And where do I want it? There. There, that one's a hard one to hit. There and there. That color off my brush and dry it off. Now what I'm going to do, and yes, the paint is still a smidge wet, and that's kind of the point. I'm going to take a little bit of the blue color and hit the eyes. I'm just hitting the back of the eyeball. So he looks like his pupils are near the back. Okay, so that's where I'm hitting it. Good enough. Even though he's big, his eyes are still very little. So we're just going to leave him. We're going to come back and start doing a wash. And the wash is going to take 4 different stages. So we're going to be doing this guy a while because we're going to have 4 stages of wash. Even though it's all the same color wash, I have to turn him so many times. So we'll come back, start the wash. After the wash, I will do that dry brushing of the gold that I talked about. But first, we got to do the wash. Well, it is now time to start doing the wash. So a wash is simply diluted paint. And I'm starting at these undersides because these are what you can't reach when he's upright. So I'm going to have to do 4 passes because here's the problem I'm going to have. I am not going to be able to reach so much of him. And I gotta get another paper towel to stick under his tail, because it's gonna drip. But when you're dealing with a model this big that definitely has spots that you're not going to be able to reach normally, you have to turn him upside down. Okay, there's no way to get the wash on his belly like this without turning him over, because I want his belly to have all this wash. I want all these crevices, you know, the underside of his tail all in here. I want this to all be covered. So what we want to do is get everything that basically faces this direction. Like this. All of these. Notice when I go over that buff color that it changes quite a bit. It deepens and darkens, and that's what we want. I better get the bottom of his feet. That's where I'm going to end up missing. Is like the bottom of his feet. That's usually what happens, is I miss the bottom of feet. But it's important. If you have feet, the bottoms of them deserve to get covered. And the bottoms of the knees. I want to do that too. But you just want to get all of these fun spots that you might not be able to get otherwise. I'm going to put quite a bit in his mouth. Okay, it's going to look like there's way too much in his mouth. I'm doing that on purpose. And the undersides of his horns. Get some on his face. Deepen that up. But it looks like I'm doing too much on his mouth. That's on purpose. Okay? It is very much on purpose. I want the inside of his mouth to be pretty dark. So let me just get more in his mouth. More on his nose. And then we'll get some on his neck. So the pass itself is relatively quick. The only reason it's going to be slowed down so much is I'm going to have to put him at 4 different angles. Basically turn him. So I'm going to put him on his side, then I'll put him on his other side, and then eventually I will stand him up and get his back. And he's going to look pretty dang cool when I'm done. But you notice this buff color really darkens when you get the wash on. And that's the point. That's the entire point. So what you want to watch for is like globbing, where you don't want it. Sometimes you want the globs. If you don't want the globs, brush them off. So just kind of look for where the globs are. Sometimes you want the globs. The globs will dry a lot darker. There. So we are going to walk away, let that dry completely, then we will come back, turn him onto his side, and just keep going. That's really what we're doing now. We're just going to keep going. All right, time to rotate him onto his side and deal with some of the areas we were not going to reach when he was upside down, because that's important. So we're just going to brush some of these areas that there was no way we were going to reach when he was upside down. Frankly, you're not going to reach all sides of this guy until he has been put in all 4 directions. So we're just going to get like the inside of his legs, the top of his legs, that kind of thing. This part doesn't take long. It takes a long time to dry because you are using quite a liquid paint here. We're using a wash, which means it's quite liquidy. Get the side of his face, get under his chin again, and we're going to get the sides of that tongue. See how nicely this buff darkens up? So it looks really good darkened, and I'm just going to take the opportunity to get under some of these scales. But it looks really good darkened up. I know it looked a little thin before, and because it looked a little thin, it looks a little sketchy at first. You're like, well, that's a really bright color. But once you bring that color down, it looks really quite impressive. It's got this kind of deep, rich tone once you use the wash over it. That's why it's important to know what wash you're going to be using. Like this is an umber wash, so it's fairly dark. It's not black. I use a lot of black washes. I like black, but it's not black. It is an umber, and it really deepens things up quite a bit, and it just looks good. I just like the way it looks. There we go. So this entire part is really fast because you just need to get all of this on there. It just takes forever to dry. So I'm just going to do a little bit more on the tail here. There we go. And he looks pretty darn good at this point. And then when we come back, we will turn him over again onto his other side and work on his other side. Then we will put him upright and work on him from the top down. But for now, we have to let that dry again. Okay, we are now ready to flip him over and do this again. I'm going to turn him this way. You'll be able to see him a little cooler. There we go. Do this again. So the whole point here is we want this to look worn and weathered. Umber is a good color for making things worn and weathered. That's why I like umber. I also really like black. Black's really good at making things look dirty. Not necessarily making things look worn. They just look dirty, which is really good if that's what the effect you're going for is. Right? So you have to use a wash that kind of matches your intent. So let's put a lot of wash inside his mouth again. So we want to get quite a bit on his horns because we want this all darkened. And then after this, we have one more round of wash to do as he's standing up, so we can get wash to fall into all the right places, because that becomes very important as well. The bottom of this foot, the sides of his legs. Sides of the legs are always really important. Darken it up in here. But essentially, we just want to make sure he looks like he's not pristine, which is the thing. We don't want him to look pristine, right? If he looks pristine, then he doesn't look like he is crawling up out of the bowels of the earth. We want him to look like he might have some dirt. That he's not necessarily dirty, he just has some dirt, and there is a difference. There's a difference between being a very dirty Tarrasque and just having some soil on you. It's not the same thing. There we go. Just about done. I just want to get his hand. Just because otherwise I might not get his hand later. There we go. But he's looking pretty good. I am pretty happy. So we have to stand him up still after this dries so I can really get his back, because that's what I really want, is to be able to get his back. And I want to get his back really quite dark, which means I'll put quite a bit of wash on it. And then what we want to do is we're going to want to start on that gold dry brushing. But for now, we're going to let him dry because he's looking fantastic. He's looking really quite good. But we're going to let him dry, then we will come back and keep going because we're still not done. I know this is a long video, but we're still not done. Okay, we are now doing our final pass to darken this dude up. We want him to look like he crawled out of the earth. So that's what we're doing. And we're definitely making sure to paint the tops of his horns and the tops of his head. we don't want to miss that, because we could have missed that easily. There we go. Back of the horns that didn't hold their color very well. And then we're just going to keep going. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn them around in a second. But we're just making sure there's enough stuff on his body that he will look the way we want him to look. So this is where I get really thick with that wash, where I want quite a lot of it, because I don't want to miss any spots. I'm okay with him having almost globular sections where there's so much, because I want him, really want him to pick up all this wash. So let's just, I'm gonna get in here first, because you can't really see it when I turn him around, or I can't really see it if I turn him around, because I'm on this side. So then we're just gonna rotate him. This will be our final pass with the wash. And after that final pass, we will come back and do the gold that I talked about, the gold dry brushing. But we're only doing that gold dry brushing on the red. So this stone is going to be the way it dries. However it dries, that's how I'm leaving it. But the actual, the actual red is going to have some dry brushing. Not a ton, just enough, because that's how we want him to look. So let's get a lot on the stone. Getting it on the stone is really important, because the stone does not look good if you don't cover it in the wash, because you need that wash to soak into those corners. So whenever you're working with stone, always do a wash, because you need those crevices to actually show up. If you don't do a wash, they won't. There's other techniques you can use, but honestly, a wash is the quickest and easiest way to get those crevices to show up on stone. So he looks pretty good. I'm just going to get a little more on his head, because I don't think he's dark enough. There we go. And then we're going to do a little more on his shoulder here. There we go. I want him to have enough that he starts to drip in some spots. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, we're going to let him dry. Then we're going to come back and do the dry brushing. The dry brushing is going to be our last step. Okay, let's get some gold on here. Remember, when you're doing dry brushing, very, very light, very, very little paint on your brush. Very gentle. Okay, very, very careful. You don't want too much. And you need your brush to be entirely dry. And when you put fresh paint on your brush, dab it off on a paper towel or a cloth or whatever you use. Just dab it off, because you probably have too much paint on your brush. You don't think you do, but I promise you do. So if you want, like I'm doing gold, so if I want more gold, I'll press harder or go over it a few more times. If I want less gold, I won't. But I definitely don't want too much paint on my brush at a time when I'm dry brushing. Now the other trick to dry brushing is don't go with the grain. So when you're going, go over top, okay? Go over top, just so you're catching the edges, okay? And if you want something darker, just press harder. Okay, if you want something darker, if you want like a streak of gold or whatever, just press a little harder. Just get his arms and his neck. Dab, 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 dab. Lots of dabs. Okay, you're just picking up a little bit of paint at a time. Not very much. Okay, you don't need much at a time, just a little bit. If you have too much on your brush, you're not going to like the result. Okay, Okay, so stay light. You can always press harder. So I have a spot where I put a little more than I wanted, but it's not going to matter in the end. So yes, just go gentle, go over the spots you want stuff on, and go so that your brush isn't going into the grooves, right? You want to brush so that you're going over the pieces. You don't want that brush sinking into the grooves, because the idea is to highlight the high spots, not get stuck in the low spots. Okay, we don't want to get stuck in the low spots. We want to go over them, be in the high spots. Unless you want to get into those low spots. Just know that if you go in the same direction as the grain of your piece, you are definitely going to wind up going into those grooves. Which, if that's what you want, then you're fine. But if you don't want that, then just watch for it. Okay, I'm going to stand him up a little bit. I need to do the underside of the tail, and I will, but I just want to be able to get this section, because I can't really glaze this section very well if I can't see it. Allows me to see a little bit better. Remember, he's a big piece, so he's going to take more than a minute to do, right? Because he's big. So definitely brush across them. Watch where your brush is going, because it's really easy to end up with your brush where you don't want it. Okay, a little darker there. I need more paint. There we go. So there's some areas where I definitely want more gold than others, where I just want to be able to see this guy. Like, I want the underside of the tail to show up a little more, so I'm adding a little more gold to my brush. Because I just want him, because you won't see the tail as easily. You just won't see the tail as easily because he's underneath, right? So I want it to kind of glisten a little more, so I'm adding a little more to the underside of that tail. Otherwise, you kind of sit back, look at your guy, turn him around a few times, decide what you want. Remember, if you like the look, that's good enough. I need a little more paint because I want more gold here. More gold on his feet. I like more gold on the feet and hands. Yeah, he's looking cool. Remember, it's what do you like? Alright, well, we are going to give that a little bit to dry. And then we're going to come back and see what he looks like when he's completely done. But we have to wait for that to dry before we know what he looks like for sure. And there we go. Our Tarrasque is looking good. I like the way the buff darkened up. I really like the way that turns out. That's why I went with such a light color. You were doubting me, weren't you? You thought that would be too light. But it turns out it's actually quite perfect. Anyway, that's about it for today. I hope you'll be back with us next time. Bye!